Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Strategic Business Influencer, my new series for leaders who know that in today's evolving world, trust is the greatest competitive advantage. Our first guest is the perfect example of what it means to lead with both tenacity and grace. She's not only a gifted entrepreneur, but she is also one of my dearest friends. So I'm excited to introduce to you all Emily LaRusch. She is the founder and CEO of Back Office Betties, a fast growing virtual receptionist company that supports law firms across the United States with A-plus fractional administrative staffing. What started as a frustration with a voicemail, and honestly, who can't relate to that, has expanded from a startup into a thriving award winning company with a reputation for excellence. But what I love most about Emily's story is she didn't build Back Office Betties by traditionally outspending the competition. She built it by obsessing over customer service, staying unapologetically real, and creating a brand that law firms trust as an extension of their own team. She is a passionate entrepreneur, a homeschool mom, a meditation advocate, and a fun fact, she's had an entrepreneurial spirit since at least the age of 6, probably before that even, when she charged neighbors to watch BMX bike shows. So yeah, this conversation is going to be equal parts tactical and fun. So let's get into it. Welcome, Emily. I am so grateful to have you on the series.
Thank you, Wing.
So you started Back Office Betties, as I mentioned, with one frustration, which was a voicemail. So I would love for you just to walk us through how you turned that one moment of frustration into a business that is now supporting law firms all across the country.
Well, I thought to myself, these local people I was trying to call and line up services, they're not answering the phone. I'm getting voicemail. One guy called me back and he was like, "Hey, I have a missed call from you." And I'm like, "Does no one want my money? This is so unprofessional." And I said, "Well, I'm not exactly a rocket surgeon, but I think I can answer a phone." And that's kind of how the idea was born. But how hard can it be? Well, anyone who's ever owned a business knows, oh, it's hard. It's really hard. But I think really being naive is what just led me into it, just to go in dumbly thinking I can do this and I can answer the phones. I certainly can answer them better than these guys were doing. And so that's kind of how it all started.
I love that. And you've grown such a successful business, award-winning business, and some new stuff. I know that'll be announced soon. That's really exciting for you and Back Office Betties. But I know that this wasn't really your first venture into entrepreneurship. I mean, you had BMX stunt shows. You also, I think what's really interesting about your background that you can talk about a little bit more is you also worked at McDonald's and you were, a customer service queen, and then now you're in the legal space. Your journey to me is anything but traditional when it comes to being a business owner. So, how has that early work ethic and obsession with just service excellence shaped the way that you really lead the team today?
Well, I know you can relate to this, but when you grow up not having a lot, Um, there can be a work ethic built in, and we didn't have a lot, and my mom often needed help, and she was in real estate. We called it farming. So back in the old days, we would put flyers out, and we spent a lot of times I would be helping her just canvassing streets, putting flyers out, helping her get ready for open houses. And we didn't have a lot, so I had to learn creative ways of entertaining myself, and making money. So I sold avocados off of our property and things like that. And when I went to work at McDonald's, this was not your average McDonald's. It was run by Jorge, and he ran that thing like a Ritz Carlton. No one stood around. Nobody was above any job. And that really instilled a work ethic in me. So I told this story yesterday, and it's disgusting, but I'm going to tell it to you. Um,
Please
I
do.
was thinking, all right, I'm 15 years old. I'm working at McDonald's. I'm a little bit on my high horse. Like, please, this is my stepping stone, Jorge. Like, this is your career. You're a grown man. Ew. I really had a crappy attitude thinking, I'm getting out of here. This is where I'm starting. This is your finish line. Well, first of all, McDonald's store managers actually make a good living. I didn't realize that. But Jorge thought he would knock me down a peg or two and show me that I'm above nothing. A woman went into the bathroom and it looks like she had a diarrhea machine gun. It was on the walls, the floors. I mean, the whole stall sprayed. I don't know how this happened, but he sent me in to clean it up. And I was usually running the drive-through and things like that, and I'm like, "This is so beneath me," but I went in and I had to clean it up, and it humbled me, and I've kinda taken that with me, like, you're never too good to do any job. And I have cleaned roach-infested apartments for $35 a cleaning. I mean, I've done whatever it took to survive in life, and so I just kinda carried that through life, like, you're never too good for anything.
Well, I love that foundation that you had. I was actually listening to a podcast with Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, and he was talking about how his first job was scraping the gum off of the tile in, I believe it was an ice cream shop in the mall, and how embarrassed he was. And he talks about, coming back to that moment that if he didn't have that foundation, he wouldn't be where he's at today. And it's so true because also, as when you're a business owner, when you're a CEO, you're also the trash person at times. You're also, the cleaner. And so there's so much that you have to do and have your hands in. So I think that's a beautiful story. Although a little gross, beautiful story. And I know that, when you got into the legal space, what I think is so interesting you built a brand that law firms work with, month over month, year over year. So they don't just hire you, they fully trust you to be kind of that front facing person for their business. And so what intentional choices did you make to build that kind of trust early on with your clients?
Well, I'm a huge fan of the magnetic marketing principle of you want to magnetically attract those that are for you and repel those that aren't. And so from day one, I wanted the company to be a place I wanted to work, which means it's a reflection of my personality. So it's a little bit cheeky, it's a little bit fun, but also we get ish done. We're professional, we're smart, we're driven, but we can have fun along the way. And that doesn't resonate with everyone. And that's okay with me. 'Cause they're not a good fit.
Mm. And I love the repel those that aren't a fit. So I'd be curious, do you have any type of story or case study where maybe you didn't do that, it didn't turn out well, or you did do that and you were so glad because it made a world of difference? Because I feel like this is a hard lesson to learn as you're growing your brand, as you're marketing, or even just being a business owner in general.
Yeah, this happened very recently. We took on a client who, everything kind of went smoothly. Our first red flag, like in dating, there's always red flags. Our first red flag was when we found out he had actually been fired by a competitor during the onboarding process. He didn't even make it to go live. But we were like, you know what, we got this. We can handle this challenge. This man, bless his heart, I'm not a doctor, clinician, but I'm quite sure is suffering from perhaps some personality disorders. Um, he screamed at my employees. He called them names. He called them incompetent. Really horrible things that I won't repeat. And three different of my employees ended up crying after speaking to him. And to like and one hand, he would praise one and then, anyways, degrade the other. And I have a no tolerance. So I told my team, when these things happen, you have my full permission to fire the client. You don't have to ask. You don't have to explain if you're yelled at, if you're degraded. We're not going to work with people like that. He ended up demanding to speak to the CEO, proceeded to spout off a lot of misogynistic comments. Um, and it got really ugly, and then it turned into a series of text messages where for a few weeks he's texting me and kind of continuing this assault. But that's a really glaring example of like the worst case scenario, and it's just not a good fit. I'm sure there's a better fit out there for him, and we try to give him some referrals, but it just wasn't a good fit for us.
Yeah, and that completely makes sense. And I'm sure, your policy around that for your team also builds a lot of trust with your team that they're going to be in a safe work environment. They're going to be in an environment that uplifts them and puts them in a place to make decisions. Just that's going to be best for themselves and the business. So I think that's really powerful too. You
Yeah.
mentioned a little bit earlier about the brand reflecting your personality. And I feel like your brand is really built in a way that's playful and professional. You can tell it in all the content that y'all put out, everything on your website, which to me is a very hard balance to strike, especially in the legal field. So I want to commend you for that. And I want to get behind the scenes. What decisions were made from day one or something that you uncovered over time that helped balance that tone for the brand?
This was actually really difficult because in the beginning, people did not take me seriously. And these are more, people in my life, people through networking. It was so different from what was being done in the legal space, which is very buttoned up and polished. And people were like, you're not going to make it. You're going to fail. You've got to be this professional. You're not projecting the right image. Well, there are a ton of really heart-centered attorneys out there that are also infusing their own personalities, their own stories. We have a client, one of my favorites, who was a victim of domestic violence and became a lawyer to help other women. She runs a very heart-centered firm, and our values and our kind of even our image really align. And so we just I love working with really heart-centered attorneys who are out there trying to change lives and create better communities. And so that's who I want to resonate with. And I want to show them that we're people. Behind the brand are people. The brand really is me. And this is a reflection of the people you're going to work with, people who care, people who value connection, and want to create more of that personal experience.
Mm. And to your point earlier, I feel like that's magnetic to your ideal client, and then it repels probably the clients that aren't, so much a fit, which I love. Uh,
Yeah, and I want to touch on like a lighter side of clients that aren't a good fit because this happens, but my philosophy has always been an abundance mindset. So even from day one, when I desperately needed every dollar I could get, I still would tell people back when I did sales calls, I'm not here to sell you on us. I want to get you in the best solution. And so there are some clients who might need 24-hour 365 services, and I'll let them know like, hey, we're not a good fit. And so I just think it's important to keep that abundance mindset and that it's okay to not be for everyone. But if I have resources to offer and I can help, like to me, my job is to help you get what's going to help you be most successful.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel that rings true just across your messaging and your website as well. You're very clear on who you can help, but also there's so many resources that you're offering and so much knowledge. A lot of owners will shy away from visibility. And you said, you want clients to see who they're going to be working with and who's really behind the brand. What would you say to the CEO who's hesitant to have their face a little bit more, um, visible alongside their brand?
So, two things. I have two takes on this. One is I am the hesitant CEO. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to network. I was so shy. You wouldn't believe it probably, but if you knew me right in the beginning page, I was biggest wallflower in the planet. And I did not want to go, but I would tell myself the baby needs to eat. The baby needs to eat. We've got to feed the baby. Um, this is how the bills are going to get paid. So I made myself go out. And one of my tricks was when I went to join networking events is I would join the board or join so that I could be of service in some way. And that was a great way for me to meet people while feeling like I had a mission, I had a job. So I did BNI for a long time, the Business Networking International, and I greetings. So I stood at the door and I greeted everyone, and that's how I got to know them. When I was in EO, the accelerator program, I joined the board and I did membership, which meant I got to interview every single person coming in, which meant I got to meet over 50 new people over time. So little things like that. And then my second take on it is I worked for Quicken Loans, which has a really cool brand, really fun, upbeat culture. While their CEO isn't the face, he's doing a lot of stuff to change the world in Detroit and things like that. But the COO is the face. You see him everywhere. And so sometimes that can work too, where maybe it's the CMO, maybe it's the COO, where if you really, really, really are just like, I cannot do this, there's probably someone who's going to be a stable, steady force within the company that can do it and wants to do it.
I love that. I feel like brands that have even multiple people visible alongside the logo really have an advantage because they're able a lot of times to showcase different areas of expertise. That's what we've tried to do here with our team just because we have incredible, function specific subject matter experts that can bring a lot more value to different topics than even I can for sure. So I like that strategy. And I would have never known that about you, Emily. I feel like you are so outgoing and so incredible. Everybody knows you in town. But I think it's so strategic the way that you thought about that mixing service with visibility and networking. I think that really speaks to your heart as well in terms of what you hope to bring to organizations and those that you meet. A lot of CEOs, when they think about their brand, it's not only their visibility, they're also thinking of logos and taglines and messaging. I think you've shown it's much more than that. It's about leadership as well. And so, what is something you do as a leader that directly impacts how clients are going to just experience your brand?
You know, I ask my team a lot of the times, is this easy for us, this decision we're making, or is it best for the client? Because sometimes we'll make decisions on what's easiest to implement on our end versus what's actually going to be the best experience for the client. And so we always stop and we'll ask. So we have little litmus tests like that. When we want to bring on maybe a new service or a new offering, we ask, is it scalable and good for the company? Does it serve our client? And does it serve our team? And so we want to make sure kind of all those three things are being hit all of the time. And we're not perfect, but we definitely try it. And I also have really had to learn to stop putting my hands in the cookie jars and getting into everybody's business and just trust. Part of it came from having the right people. There was a time where I didn't. And so I did meddle a lot, and so once I did get the right people, I've really had to learn to let go and trust them and allow them to make decisions and so that they feel empowered with what they're doing.
Yeah. People are everything to a business. And I feel like you and I have discussed that a lot. And so I love hearing that. I want to end with two questions that I want to ask every leader and entrepreneur I talk with. First question is, who are you in addition to being a CEO?
I like to say I'm kind of a little bit crunchy, kind of a hippie mama, but also very businessy. So it's kind of weird. I know that I just call it quitchy conservative. I'm not super hippy dippy, but um, I really am into personal growth, meditation, wellness. I used to say if I could spend my time going to woo woo conferences as a job, like that would be the ideal thing for me. I never want to stop learning and growing. And it's like every time I think that this is it, I uncovered this trauma, I healed, I grew, like I'm this better person. And I can tell you, like, even starting from being terrified to talk about my business, terrified to go to a networking event, and I feel like I am public speaking now and I am teaching and coaching and I'm so different. So I think like, okay, I've made it. I've made it. And then it's like, no, I peel back another layer of the onion. It's like there's always more work to do. So that's probably my biggest passion. And I like to try and find ways to infuse that even within the business to promote mental health well-being and just personal growth, living your best life.
Mm, I love that. And that's one, so powerful, but two, I have learned so much from you throughout the years. Just, you're a phenomenal mom. You are always striving to learn something new, and that really inspires me. So grateful to know you in that capacity. My second question for you is, what is the impact that you want to have at the end of every single day?
I would hope to leave people in a better place than they were, or at least positively. I want to have positive interactions. And, ultimately, I think a business is a catalyst to be a bit of a butterfly effect. So, we've got many, many employees now, you know, over 50 at this point. And so for me, it's kind of like, how can I make their lives better? Which means they make their communities better and their homes better and just have this butterfly effect that hopefully touches a lot of places before our time on this earth is over.
That's beautiful. Well, Thank you so much, Emily, for being the first guest ever on the Strategic Business Influencer. I know leaders are going to learn so much from you, and I'm just so appreciative for you to come on today.
Thank you, Paige. It's been a blast.
Thank you. We'll see y'all next time.